Our hope. And if we don't? Sylas asked, stepping closer, his voice barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of the choice lingering in the air. Do we just sit and wait for them to decide who lives and dies? The echo of his question felt like a palpable crack in the air. Gwendolyn froze, her heart racing, not just in fear, but in recognition of the truth he presented. A pause settled over the group, where silence enveloped them like a thick fog. I'm not sacrificing anyone, she said finally, her voice steady though laced with urgency. I refuse to choose despair. We find another way. Moral high ground doesn't win games, a newcomer, Jonas, chimed in, leaning against a shelf littered with dilapidated machinery. What do you think they want? Heroes? No, but they want us broken, Gwendolyn countered, her eyes flashing as they caught Sylas's. In that moment, they both understood the weight of the stakes together yet apart, caught in the same storm but needing to maintain their respective positions within the group. Silence fell again, and within that beat, Gwendolyn's mind raced. She mulled over her ideals, the values she'd fought to uphold. What if they bend a little? She caught Sylas's gaze, the flicker of a smile ghosting his lips, a confidence unconfidently masked. You're thinking it too, aren't you? He said quietly, while the others began to bicker amongst themselves. But the look on Gwendolyn's face was still rigid. I won't give in to this chaos. Can't argue with that, Sylas replied, his grin fading as seriousness settled in not just between them, but in the weight of the entire room. The group continued to debate, their voices a low rumble of disbelief and frustration. Meanwhile, Rosa and Eric stood with crossed arms, a storm of dissent brewing. The two were often at odds, oscillating between friendship and rivalry. Their exchanges now felt like swordplay. Let them handle it, Eric sneered. You know it's easier to throw one of us to the wolves than to fight back. It's a game of numbers. That's exactly what they want you to think. Rosa shot back, her cheeks flushed in passionate defiance. But we have to hold on to our choices. We're not just numbers. Ben snorted at that, the sarcasm dripping from his words. Yeah, but sometimes being a number is better than being dead. The palpable tension was interrupted by Gwendolyn again, her hand raised to silence them. Enough, she commanded, her voice slicing through the chatter. We hold our ground together, or we end up as pawns, adrift in their game. We choose courage over fear, no matter what that means. The silence that greeted her bold declaration spoke more than any word could. Sylas felt his heart thud against his ribcage, his admiration for Gwendolyn blooming amidst their dire situation. He stole a glance at the others, a silent agreement woven between them all. They would stand united, choose courage, even if it meant confronting the abyss together. Let's then, Sylas said, stepping even closer to Gwendolyn, the eyes of the group glued to her. Let's find our way back. And even amidst the uncertainty, there was strength in her resolve, and within the softening tension, a silent promise was forged. Scene 12. Fragmented alliances. The steady drumming of rain against the roof echoed the tension thickening in the air. A dim light flickered as Sylas knelt beside Ash, their fellow player, who lay sprawled on the damp ground, struggling to catch his breath. Blood seeped from a wound on Ash's leg, the stark contrast of crimson on muddy earth stark against the muddy gray sky. Can we truly trust them? Asher's eyes darted toward Gwendolyn, fear mingling with desperation. Do you even know what lies behind those thin walls? Gwendolyn's shoulders tightened as she adjusted the torn fabric around Ash's injury, a wave of determination breaking through her uncertainty. It doesn't matter now, she replied, glancing at Sylas. We have to help him. He deserves a chance. Her voice, though firm, trembled with unspoken doubts of their allegiance, the lingering shadow of doubt cloaking the camaraderie they once shared. A chance? Sylas echoed, shaking his head as he poured water over the makeshift bandage Gwendolyn held. You make it sound so easy. There's no room for chances when lives are on the line. The same could be said for your past, she shot back, a flash of frustration flickering across her face. Yet beneath it lay a shared understanding. Both bore burdens they couldn't yet unveil. The air crackled with unshed secrets. They shared a glance time suspended as the world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the pulsating anxiety of decisions unmade. For a moment it felt like the chaos surrounding them peeled away, revealing another layer, a connection born of shared survival. They both understood losing Ash could unravel everything they'd tried to stitch back together in this merciless game. As Ash winced, his voice broke through, strained yet earnest. "Gwen, Sylas, you have to be careful. They're watching us." The rain intensified, the droplets bouncing off the ground as if in sync with their racing hearts. Gwendolyn bowed her head, her fingers brushing against Silas's knuckles, a fleeting touch, tender in its vulnerability. "We have to band together, or this game swallows us whole." "Band together?" Sylas pulled his hand away, stepping back, battling a storm of emotions. "Do you realize what we're risking? They'll turn on us the moment we show weakness." "Maybe we have to show weakness first," she challenged gently, her eyes softening. "Strength isn't just about keeping secrets, it's about knowing when to let others in." "Letting others in could mean our doom," Sylas argued, though his conviction felt shaky. But as he met her gaze, the intensity of her resolve washed over him, a quiet understanding that perhaps there was more at stake than just survival. Across the clearing, a group murmured, their breath steamy clouds against the chilly air. Elena, a sharp-tongued strategist, pitched her voice just above a whisper. "Gwen's convincing them, and Ash, well, I don't trust weak links. This could be a trap. Or a chance to create an alliance," Phil chimed in, flinging a furtive glance at the others. "You can't survive alone, Elena, you know that." "Trust? Ha! We're in a death game, Phil. Grow up," she snapped, crossing her arms defiantly. "And just because they've shown a moment of compassion doesn't mean we fall for it." Laughter broke through, unexpected yet welcomed, as Benny, sporting a mischievous grin, commented, "Look at this bunch. If we're not careful, they'll start writing love letters between the battles." "Romantic gestures don't win games, Benny." "Focus," Ash retorted, though a faint smile creased his lips, grateful for the banter that soothed the tension swirling amongst them. Back with Sylas and Gwendolyn, the moment hovered, fragile yet potent. She moved closer, her breath warm against his chilled skin. "Fighting alone is how we lose. You know that, don't you?" Silas's heart stammered against the storm of unresolved feelings swelling inside as he caught her earnest gaze. "Maybe," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, "but relying on the wrong people can be just as fatal." As they inched closer, the rain outside painted strokes of hope and desperation. But within their makeshift camp, shadows of doubt lingered, heavy and unyielding. Would they gamble everything on the same fragile thread? Or would the very act of trust become their undoing? What Sylas and Gwendolyn couldn't yet foresee was that their decision to help Ash would fracture their faction into competing alliances, igniting the kind of drama that could reshape the game altogether. The thrill of camaraderie came with hidden costs, and choices loomed ahead like looming storm clouds, ever ready to burst. Scene 13. Whispers of Danger. The moon cast a pallid glow over the dilapidated warehouse, its rust-eaten walls creaking like the bones of the forgotten. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of metal and sweat, suffocating yet charged with an unnameable tension. Sylas Archer's heart thrummed in his chest, a rhythmic reminder of his predicament. Shadows flickered in the corners of the spacious room, where twisted metal sculptures loomed, merging reality and nightmare. Sylas stood by a grimy window, the cracked glass allowing the night's coolness to seep through, bringing with it a whisper of impending danger. He skulked close to the wall, cloaked in the shadow of a half-broken crate. His fingers tensed around the edge, the texture rough against his palm, much like the quicksand of trust between him and Gwendolyn Frost. Gwendolyn paced a narrow path nearby, her brow furrowed in deep contemplation as they prepared their next move. The subtle click of her heels against the concrete floor echoed ominously, a sound that seemed to amplify her underlying anxiety. Sylas watched her, a whisper of admiration breaking through the tumult of their dire circumstances. "Do you feel it?" Gwendolyn stopped abruptly, turning toward him, her tone fiery. "We're walking into something we can't even see." "Better than walking blindly into a trap, which is exactly what we're doing if we venture to confront them," Sylas replied, his voice even, but his eyes danced with worry. Gwendolyn's frustration flared, an inferno stoked by the 100th whispered argument of their partnership. "It's all a game to them, Sylas. Our lives are merely pieces on their board." She threw her hands up, exasperated. "Do you really think they're going to let us uncover their plan?" "We don't have a choice, Gwen," he snapped. The air thickened around them, crackling with unspoken thoughts. Every moment we hesitate, the plot deepens. They're already toying with our fates. Just as tension peaked, muffled voices drifted in from the darkness beyond the old light fixtures. Their hearts quickened in sync as they strained to listen, adrenaline coursing through their veins. "Execute the plan tomorrow night," came a voice, cold and commanding, reverberating across the walls. The two of them won't stand a chance once the game begins. Gwendolyn's eyes widened as pieces fell into place. "Sylas? They're talking about us." Sweat prickled at the back of Sylas's neck. "We need to." "Gwendolyn!" A distant voice rang out, the familiar tone breaking the threat of the moment. It was Emma, their ally, her presence often a buoy in the storm. "You won't believe what I just overheard." Startled, Gwendolyn turned sharply, her irritation momentarily eclipsed by concern. "You shouldn't be here alone." "Relax, I'm fine." Emma waved dismissively, her eyes wide with urgency. "But it's bad. They're planning to take out Sylas and you during the fiasco. Something about a decoy and a distraction." Sylas shot Gwendolyn a knowing look. "We can't waste any time. We need a counterplan." "I'm not letting them play us like fiddles." Gwendolyn insisted, meeting his gaze with fire finally igniting in her eyes. "But we can't just charge at them recklessly." At that moment, a vulnerability slipped through Sylas's guarded demeanor. He stepped closer to her, his voice softening. "Gwen, I don't want to lose you in this." Her heart raced not just from fear, but at the proximity, the heat of his concern washing over her, grounding them both. For a fleeting second, the world outside could disappear, and it would just be them. "Neither do I," Gwendolyn murmured, her resolve momentarily faltering. "But everything's spiraling. We have to be 2 steps ahead." "Then we'll be dangerous together," he said, lifting her chin gently with his finger, their eyes locking in the promise of shared purpose. As they stepped back from their intimacy, the shouts echoed again, drowning out whispers of camaraderie. Emma, adrenaline surging, leaned in. "They'll be here soon." In the dim light, urgency cloaked their resolve as the trio braced themselves for impending danger. Choices lay ahead, treachery in the air, but together they could navigate the shadowy labyrinth of deception that was their reality. "Let's show them we're not pawns," Gwendolyn whispered fiercely as they turned toward the looming darkness, knowing they'll fight back with everything they had. "Let's take this game back." Sylas felt the weight of her ambition, a palpable tether. "Together," he agreed, swallowing the knot of fear that had formed in his throat, an unbreakable bond forged in flames. Scene 14. Hidden Agendas. The air inside the dimly lit warehouse hung heavy with tension, each breath laced with the metallic tang of adrenaline and uncertainty. Shadows danced across the concrete walls, twisting and turning like the players in this deadly game. Tables were strewn with maps and dusty files, each a remnant of the lives wrenched apart by this insidious arena. The flickering fluorescent light overhead buzzed, echoing the erratic pulse of hope and despair intermingling in the room. Sylas Archer leaned against a graffiti-covered pillar, keenly observing the flurry of whispers and quick gestures around him. The factions that had once seemed unified in purpose were beginning to splinter, torn apart by fear and ambition. It was a chess game gone awry, and he could decipher the motives hidden in the glances exchanged among their cohort. "Gwendolyn," he called, his voice breaking through the cacophony. She turned to him, her brow furrowing as the weight of mistrust settled between them. Sylas stepped closer, and the raw intensity of her gaze held him captive. "I don't know who to trust anymore," she admitted, her voice a fragile whisper, as if the walls might carry her doubts beyond. "You know this world better than I do. Are there sides forming that we can't see?" "Not just sides," Sylas replied, urgency dancing in his voice. "They're sharpening knives behind smiles. Everyone has an agenda, Gwen, even us." At their periphery, Rhea stood with her back pressed hard against the cold steel doorframe, arms crossed, observing the pair with narrowed eyes. She had once aspired to rally the group under a common cause, but the escalating paranoia was grinding her resolve into dust. "This is madness," Rhea interjected, frustration bubbling in her tone. "Is anyone even considering the stakes anymore?" "Do you think anyone cares?" barked Felix, the ever-skeptical strategist. With tousled hair and dark circles betraying sleepless nights, he burst into the fray, casting a shadow that was almost as heavy as his words. We're lambs led to slaughter. They're playing us against each other like marionettes. Gwendolyn's jaw tightened. Then let's not give them the satisfaction, she said, punctuating her words with fierce determination. We need to create our own agenda. As the tension crackled in the air, Sylas stepped closer to Gwendolyn, sensing the vulnerability projected in her stormy blue eyes. We do this together. No one can stand alone. His voice dipped lower, the intimacy of their shared purpose enveloping them like a warm cloak against the chill of betrayal swirling around the room. Gwendolyn hesitated, then took a breath that reached deeper than mere air into the cavern of uncertainty they both inhabited. "But can I trust you?" she questioned, her gaze searching for honesty among the shadows of deceit. "You have a past, Sylas. I don't know your loyalties." He hesitated but held her gaze. "Would I be here if I didn't believe in this?" "Belief is a flimsy foundation," she countered, a hint of defiance dancing in the air. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the other end, piercing through their intensity. Amid their collective spiral of dread, Sam, their resident jokester, stood, comically mimicking an overzealous leader, waving his arms as if conducting an unseen orchestra. "And now, for my next act, I shall reveal my brilliant strategy, which entails running in circles until our captors are dizzy." The levity momentarily dissolved the palpable tension, and a soft chuckle escaped Gwendolyn despite her turmoil. But the fleeting moment did nothing to ease her heart. It merely masked the growing dread clawing at her resolve. Rhea, humorlessly unimpressed, retorted, "That's not going to save us." But deep inside, even she felt the urge to smile at Sam's antics, though she quickly squashed it. Sylas leaned closer to Gwendolyn, one hand resting casually against the roughened brick behind her. The intimacy of their proximity ignited something unnameable between them. "Gwen," he said softly, "trust shouldn't be measured by the past, but by what we decide today." For a heartbeat, the world outside faded, the cold metal of the walls, the whispers, the laughter. It was just them bound in a moment heavy with connected uncertainties. She felt the air thick with possibilities, the unsaid promise lingering between them. "Then let's make today count," she whispered, letting her defenses crack just enough to invite a flicker of hope. As their eyes latched onto one another in that suspended reality, the impending fallout lingered in the air, palpable and electric. The stage was set, the players uncertain, yet filled with whispered courage. Scene 15. A dangerous revelation. Through the cracked and weathered windows of the decaying warehouse, the fading light struggled against the horizon. The air was thick, laced with the musty scent of damp wood, mingling with the faint metallic tang of rust. Sylas leaned against the cold, unyielding surface of a dilapidated metal beam, the chill cutting through his thin shirt, mirroring the chill spreading through his gut. Shadows danced around him, flickering like the tightening grip of his apprehensions. Across the room, Gwendolyn paced, her brow furrowed in concentration. The light caught the edges of her dark hair, framing her face with an ethereal glow. As she traced her fingers along the chipped wall, she spoke, her voice steady but strained. "We need to figure out what they really want from us, Sylas. There's a reason we're here, and it's not only about the game." Her eyes were sharp, glistening with determination, but he could see the undercurrent of vulnerability lurking beneath her poised exterior. It tugged at a part of him he had long tried to suppress. "I know," Sylas replied, pushing himself off the beam. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. "But what if this is all just a means to an end?" He stepped towards her, their simmering tension palpable in the small, darkened space. "What if I'm more than a pawn in their game?" Gwendolyn paused, her gaze locking onto his. "What are you saying?" There was a flicker of fear in her voice. He hesitated, his thoughts swirling like the golden rays of sunset filtering through the grime on the glass. He clenched his jaw, the weight of his secret pressing against him. "They've targeted us for a reason, Gwen. I know. I was once part of this." A deafening silence fell between them, thickening the air. Gwendolyn's eyes widened, her heartbeat matching the erratic rhythm of uncertainty that flashed across her features. "What do you mean? You're not serious." "Serious as a heart attack," Sylas replied, the humor dripping from his words like syrup, thick, viscous, and heavy. "I was involved in the very circle that orchestrated this game." Gwendolyn took a step back, her body tense, her hands fists at her sides. You? But that means? I know what it means, he shot back, frustration spiking in his veins. The clash in their eyes was like thunder rolling across a stormy sky. Do you think I've forgotten who I was? The question hung in the air, a vicious vine of truth waiting to ensnare them both. Just then, the door creaked, and their strained moment was broken by Ava and Luke bursting into the room, laughter spilling out of them like music. You two should join our little party, Ava exclaimed, twirling into the space. She abruptly halted when she sensed the tension, her infectious smile faltering. Oh, what's going on here? Nothing. Sylas's voice was clipped, and he shot a glance at Gwendolyn. She looked away, her expression unreadable, a mixture of disappointment and anger. Nothing, Luke echoed, leaning against the wall, his casual demeanor belying the tension. You're both as white as ghosts. Lighten up! Yeah, lighten up! Ava added, smirking playfully. Her teasing only deepened the silence in the air. Gwendolyn swallowed hard, stepping into the slightly delayed beat of camaraderie. Can't we focus? This is serious. We're all players in a deadly game. She met Sylas's gaze one last time, her fierce determination crumbling against the wall of his secret. Fine, then you can be the bossy one, Ava said lightly, breaking the moment's pulse. But the levity felt hollow. Sylas's stomach twisted. The laughter around him felt like an echo in the vastness of their impending doom. He wanted to lean in to Gwendolyn, to whisper apologies, to bridge the chasm growing wider between them. Instead, he pivoted sharply, shaking his head in disbelief. Whatever this is, we can't hide behind smiles anymore. This is deeper than we think. Deeper? Luke raised an eyebrow, seeking clarity. Are we talking death-level deep, or ignoring our problems deep? I'm talking about our life, Sylas replied, locking eyes with Gwendolyn again, the silence stretching long enough for a few heartbeats. It's about to change, and we need to either embrace it or escape. Gwendolyn stared at him, conflict etching deeper lines on her face, a storm brewing in those striking green eyes. She stepped closer, needing to bridge the gap, feeling every inch of her pride wobble. Then let's change it together. But for Sylas, that closeness was like a whispered promise caught in the air, and suddenly the room felt claustrophobic. As silence fell, the darkness outside deepened, and he could sense a fate unfurling, a terrifying dance with destiny that he could no longer ignore. Scene 16. Blood and Bonds. The sun hung low over the arena, casting long shadows that twisted across the cracked earth like memories clawing to escape. A faint breeze whispered through the desolation, carrying with it the pungent odor of blood mixed with sweat, a sickly reminder of the brutality that had unfolded. Sylas Archer crouched behind a crumbling wall, the rough texture of the stone pressing against his palm as he surveyed the chaos just a few yards away. He could hear the distant clang of weapons and the sharp cries of the desperate. But his focus was fixed on Gwendolyn Frost, her fierce spirit igniting defiance in the face of calamity. She darted between the trees, her movements fluid and graceful, navigating the battlefield with an innate sense of purpose. The sunlight glistened off her wild hair, illuminating the determination etched in her features as she fought to rally the others, her voice unwavering amidst the clamor. Regroup, we have to. The sound of her voice shattered abruptly like glass as a figure lunged at her from the shadows, adrenaline surging through Sylas's veins. He surged forward, his body reacting faster than his mind could register, closing the distance in an instant. The attack came in a flurry, a harsh metallic slashing that narrowly missed Gwendolyn. Without a second thought, he leapt, tackling her to the ground just as the blade whizzed above them, embedding itself in the earth. Gwendolyn! Sylas gasped, rolling free as they landed in a tangled heap, fingertips grazing her skin. The world around them fell away, every clash and shout muffled as he locked eyes with her. In that moment, the arena faded into obscurity. What were you thinking? She breathed, the surprise etched across her features, a constant dance of admiration and frustration. I was thinking of you, he replied, his tone serious, yet punctuated by the underlying warmth that flickered between them, illuminating the urgency of their closeness. He was acutely aware of the heat radiating from her body and how their breaths mingled in the air between them. Gwendolyn's expression shifted, the previous fierceness melting into something softer, more vulnerable. But before the moment could deepen, the chaos of the arena erupted once more, pulling them back into the fray. Come on! she urged, scrambling to her feet and extending her hand toward him. "We can't stay here." But the connection lingered, and Sylas, momentarily frozen by the intensity of what had just occurred, felt an electric jolt at their touch. As they sprinted together, he became hyper-aware of her proximity, the way her breath quickened, the magnetic pull that drew him closer. Nearby, a clamor rose from a group of fighters caught in a desperate struggle. Gary, a stocky friend with a wry wit sharper than any blade, swung a club against an opponent. "I swear, if I survive this, I'm taking a vacation somewhere with no weapons," he shouted, a hint of dark humor lacing his voice that could only come from sheer desperation. "Not in Hawaii, though. Can't risk that." Marcy piped in from behind a tree, her voice breaking with a laugh as she fired an arrow skillfully, arching it over the conflict. As Sylas and Gwendolyn rushed by, he couldn't help but shoot her a sideways glance, the camaraderie offering a much-needed levity amid the grim spectacle. "So, Hawaii? You'd need some serious sunscreen for all that overwrought sunbathing." "Just consider it motivation," Gwendolyn replied, her focus unwavering as she saved a fellow fighter from an impending strike. Each movement she made was both imposing and intoxicating, igniting a flicker of fire within Sylas. But as they navigated through the encampment, the looming shadows of danger pressed closer. Gwendolyn was aiming the bow, her finger taut against the string, when suddenly a blade whirled towards them. Sylas, instinctively reacting, shoved her aside, taking the impact on himself as he scrambled upright. "Watch," he yelled, reeling from the pain while catching sight of their relentless pursuers, shadows dancing like angry specters over the battlefield. He turned back to Gwendolyn, the air thick around them. "Whatever happens, we're doing this together." Her eyes locked onto his, understanding the weight of those words, their shared burdens melding into something palpable. In the heavy atmosphere of uncertainty and chaos, Sylas leaned forward, capturing her gaze as if they were the only two people left alive in a dying world. "Together," she echoed, her voice trembling with unvoiced promises and uncharted paths. And as the sun dipped, casting miniature explosions of color in the sky, they found solace not in safety, but in the unity of blood and bonds forged anew through the clash of calamity. In the storm of their fractured lives, the unbreakable force of their connection began to solidify in the realm of hope. Scene 17. Unlikely Allies. The dimly lit common area of the bunker hummed with nervous energy. Flickering fluorescent lights cast erratic shadows on the cracked concrete walls, where unsettling graffiti echoed the cynicism of the game's tortured participants. At a grimy table, Sylas Archer meticulously arranged the scant resources they had collected: bottled water, meager rations, a few makeshift weapons fashioned from salvaged scraps. Each item felt heavier than it should, weighted by the stakes at play. Gwendolyn Frost stood nearby, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her gaze darting between their growing collection and the door. The tension in her body mirrored a taut bowstring, ready to snap at any moment. "Look at this mess," she sighed, voice sharp. "A handful of cans and we're supposed to storm their castle? It's pointless." Sylas looked up, his cobalt eyes narrowing. "You think I don't realize that? But it's all we have until we can get our hands on more from the supply cache." He leaned in, voice low. "Trust me. We gather what we can now. Then we strike when they least expect it." "Trust? Trust is not a luxury we can afford," Gwendolyn rebutted, her voice rising. "We're pawns in a game, Sylas, or have you forgotten that?" "Aren't we all?" he shot back, the heat of frustration spilling into his tone. "This isn't some playground, it's survival." In the back corner, Claire, a quiet member of the group, fiddled with a fraying deck of cards. The rift between Sylas and Gwendolyn had become painfully predictable. She caught the intensity of their argument, a mixture of anger and something unspoken hanging in the air. "Hey, you two." Claire's voice was a gentle but firm reminder, cutting through the tension. "We need allies. If we're going to make any real moves, we can't afford to be divided. We should be working together." A wall of silence enveloped the room, but it was Oliver, the group's unlikely comic relief, who broke it with a burst of laughter. "Right, nothing screams teamwork like a fierce debate about canned beans and betrayal." His bright eyes twinkled in the dimness, but there was an underlying seriousness as he leaned on the table. "I mean, seriously, what's the plan here? All of you acting like I'm not the only one with charm and charisma clearly counts for something." Charm doesn't win games like this, Sylas snapped, voice cold. It takes strategy. Oliver shrugged, unabashed. Yeah, but when that strategy includes arguing instead of preparing, you've lost both charm and chance of survival. His humor was meant to lighten the mood. Instead, it glowed like a beacon of shimmering absurdity against the morose reality. Yes, but this isn't about charm, Oliver. Gwendolyn's voice gained a softer edge. It's about what we're willing to sacrifice. Look around. We don't have the luxury of time. We need to secure alliances out there if we stand a chance. At that moment, Sylas's clenched fists relaxed just a little, and he turned toward Gwendolyn, their eyes locking momentarily. This isn't just about outsmarting them. It's about trust. Who can we really depend on? Because if we don't know that... Gwendolyn took a step closer, sensing the weight of his words. If we don't know that, we might as well be signing our own death warrants. There was a flicker of vulnerability beneath Sylas's bravado. That hidden past, the elite circles he once ruled, pricked at him again, a ghost that wouldn't quiet. Perhaps we need someone on the inside, Claire suggested, her fingers still nervously tracing the deck of cards. Someone who knows how they think. At that, a figure entered the room, a newcomer, Mark, his expression veiled, but his presence imposing. I heard what you said, he announced, a tight smile curling into place. Inside, that's my forte, and I've got connections that might surprise you. This is exactly what we need, Oliver chimed, a grin splitting his face. Alleys in unexpected places. Ah, this is starting to feel like a heist film. As laughter rippled through the room, breaking the tension, Sylas's gaze met Gwendolyn's again, her lips curling upward despite herself. If we can muster all our strengths... Sylas began, but Gwendolyn interrupted. Enough with the drama, Sylas. Let's focus. Their exchange sparked a glimmer of understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of the paths they'd walked to reach this fragile alliance. I hope we all know what we're signing up for, Gwendolyn said, fingers trembling slightly as she reached out for Mark. Because if this goes south, it won't. Sylas interjected, his voice steadier now. Not as long as we stand together, right? Right? The others echoed, a chorus of hope amidst uncertainty. The stakes were higher than ever, but within the chaos simmered a bond forged out of necessity. Each character, flawed yet resilient, began a dance, a choreography of trust and treachery in a space fraught with peril and opportunity. Scene 18, Navigating Betrayals. The dimly lit room held an air thick with unspoken words. Shadows flickered along the cracked walls as the lone bulb overhead buzzed softly. Sylas stood near the window, gazing out at the churning skyline, a tumult of storm clouds gathering above the city. Raindrops raced each other down the glass, echoing the unresolved tension inside him. Gwendolyn's footsteps whispered behind him. Her presence filled the space, a contrast to the oppressive atmosphere. You can feel it too, can't you? She asked, her voice steady but laced with anticipation. Like a storm waiting to break, he replied, finally turning to face her. Sylas studied her, the resolute way she held herself, the fire in her hazel eyes that seemed to burn brighter with each passing moment in this hellish game. A short silence enveloped them, thick like the humidity in the air. With a deep breath, Gwendolyn stepped closer. What if they're watching us now? Her gaze dropped to the floor, flicking back to meet his. We need to be careful, Sylas. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, the warmth lingering longer than necessary. We've come this far together. It won't end like this. A sardonic smile tugged at her lips. Your brand of optimism is refreshing, but we're surrounded by traitors. He raised an eyebrow, curious. Are you including yourself in that mix? Gwendolyn bristled at his jest, though her lips quirked slightly. I'd never betray you. I just don't trust anyone else. Their laughter bounced off the walls, lightening the mood for a fraction of a second. Yet the heavy weight returned in a heartbeat. Cautiously, Sylas slid into the proverbial battlefield of their trust, trying to gauge their fragile alliance. You know, I've been thinking, are we even on the same side anymore? Before she could respond, a muffled knock echoed from the door, breaking the tenuous moment like glass. Both turned towards the sound, tension thickening the air anew. Who is it? Sylas called, his voice steady. Jackson, came the voice from the outside, tinged with urgency. We need to talk. It's about the others. While he opened the door, Sylas felt Gwendolyn's hand brush against his, a fleeting connection sparking hesitation in the back of his mind. Jackson stepped into the room, his breathing shallow, eyes wide with alarm. They've caught wind of something big. A plan. A betrayal. From whom? Gwendolyn asked, her tone clipped, reflexively pushing the fear towards the back of her mind. Jackson ran a hand through his tousled hair, the casual gesture underlining his own anxiety. From within. A split among the ranks you wouldn't believe. Some think they can take control before the game twists again. Gwendolyn and Sylas exchanged glances, thoughts racing silently between them. The stakes had just heightened, but everyone in that room was too aware of the layers of deception surrounding them. Why should we trust you? Sylas challenged, narrowing his eyes. The last time you had intel, it turned out to be a trap. Jackson shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting around the room as if plotting exits. This is different. I feel it in my gut. We can't afford to turn against each other now. We need to unite or risk becoming the targets. Unite how? Gwendolyn replied, her voice cutting through the noise. With who? The faction that's ready to stab us in the back at the first sign of weakness? Sylas interrupted with a sigh, aware tension was spiraling out of control. Enough. We need to focus. He could sense Gwendolyn's body tense beside him. If we follow your lead, Jackson, we need clear evidence. Gather what you can. With a quick nod towards Jackson, who looked momentarily relieved, Gwendolyn stepped back, her posture relaxing only slightly. Sylas watched her carefully, sensing a silent bond solidifying between them, even amidst the riddles and rats in their midst. As Jackson led them hastily out the door, Sylas caught Gwendolyn's gaze one last time. In that passing glance, he sensed an unspoken promise, one that swirled with laughter, trust, and vulnerability, a connection forged in the fires of chaos. Let's make sure they don't see us coming, Gwendolyn murmured, her lips barely curving into a smile, and with that they stepped into the unknown, ready to face the betrayals waiting in the shadows. Scene 19. The conspiracy deepens. The air in the abandoned warehouse hung thick with the scent of rust and old wood, mingling with the damp chill that seeped through the cracks in the walls. Overhead, a flickering fluorescent light buzzed like a disconcerted bee, casting erratic shadows across the concrete floor. Gwendolyn Frost stood by a shattered window, her breath fogging the glass. Outside, the rain fell in heavy sheets, relentless and unyielding, as if echoing the chaotic storm brewing within her. Sylas Archer stepped into the dim light, his silhouette cutting through the murky atmosphere. He wore a contemplative frown, his brow furrowed as he observed her. "You seem far away," he remarked, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of concern. Gwendolyn turned, her expression a complex mix of determination and vulnerability. "I've been thinking about Aiden," she confessed, her voice tight. "What if he's involved? What if he knew all along?" Sylas crossed the room, closing the distance between them. The warmth of his presence enveloped her, a stark contrast to the cold dread clawing at her insides. "You trust him. You always have," he replied softly, the sincerity in his tone both a comfort and a challenge. "I did," she admitted, her eyes flickering with doubt. "But what if that trust was misplaced? What if he's just another player in this deadly game?" The rain intensified, drumming an urgent rhythm against the roof. Gwendolyn leaned against the window frame, her fingers tracing the cold surface. "I've seen shadows of lies in the corners of this place. The way he talks, the things he knows, it's all too calculated." "Maybe he's trying to protect you," Sylas offered, the hint of a frown deepening on his face. "Or manipulate me." Gwendolyn's gaze darted to him, the weight of betrayal hanging between them. She took a step closer. "Can we trust anyone?" His eyes searched hers, a gravity forming in the space they shared. "We're in this together. If he's hiding something, we'll find it out." "Together," she echoed, testing the word as if it were a fragile glass ornament. Their alliance felt as fragile as a flickering candle in the storm, yet it also sparked warmth deep within her. Just then, the door banged open, and a chorus of voices burst through the entrance. It was their ragtag group of survivors, each carrying pieces of the web they were all trapped in. Marcus, his dark curls damp and tangled, entered first, tossing a crumpled map onto the table with a flourish. "I found something," he declared, excitement brightening his features. "The exit?" Jenna asked, her sharp green eyes filled with hopeful anticipation. "Not quite," Marcus said, a hint of mischief in his tone as he leaned closer to Gwendolyn. more of a way into the heart of things. If we're going to wake up from this nightmare, we need to rattle some cages. Gwendolyn raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? We've got to dig deeper. Marcus gestured wildly. Aiden's linked to others, people in powerful positions. If we can expose him, we might unravel the whole conspiracy. We need to talk to Jenna. She knows firsthand what's at stake. Sylas's expression hardened, and he exchanged a knowing glance with Gwendolyn. And what about the risk? What if Aiden is ready for that? What if this revelation is a trap? Then we'll spring it first. Marcus's enthusiasm was contagious, his voice rising over the patter of the rain. We'll catch them off guard. How can we trust anyone? Gwendolyn interjected, the weight of her previous thoughts still heavy on her. We could end up as pawns in a greater game. Amid the conversation swirling around her, a familiar voice echoed in Gwendolyn's mind. Aiden had always been a thorn nestled in the fabric of her trust. She shivered, that storm inside her not receding but only growing fiercer. Suddenly, the laughter from Alex, their resident optimist with an eye for mischief, cut through the tension. Don't worry, if we mess up, we'll just become legends around here. The bold rebels who fought against the oppressive system. That sounds cool, right? The laughter that erupted mitigated some of Gwendolyn's tension, but deep within uncertainty still gripped her. She cast a sidelong glance at Sylas, whose steadfastness emanated a fierce loyalty. Was that enough? As the rain cascaded outside, Gwendolyn took a determined breath. We're doing this, but we need a plan, one that doesn't leave us vulnerable. Sylas nodded, a glint of resolve shining in his eyes. Together, then. Let's rip this facade right off. Together? Gwendolyn repeated, feeling the fragile flicker of hope ignite within her chest. All the while, amidst the laughter and chatter, Aiden's shadow loomed heavy in her heart, complicating everything. Scene 20. Heart of the Storm. A sharp wind whipped through the arena, carrying the distant echoes of chaos shouts mingled with the metallic clang of weaponry, the air saturated with the scent of sweat and fear. The once pristine ground now lay tarnished, stained by the struggles of those trapped within the deadly game. Sylas Archer took a breath, the cool air settling in his lungs, invigorating yet filled with an undercurrent of anxiety. His dark, tousled hair ruffled slightly as he surveyed the scene, a tempest brewing just beyond the walls. Gwendolyn Frost stood beside him, her body wound tight like a coiled spring. A faint sheen of sweat glistened on her brow, but her eyes remained fierce, scanning the mayhem for any signs of movement. We can't wait much longer, she urged, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in their hearts. What do you suggest? Sylas replied, keeping his gaze fixed forward. The weight of their predicament loomed over them. A fragile bond of trust developed in the crucible of conflict, heavier than any sword they wielded. He felt the pulse of their unspoken connection, a drive that compelled him to protect her fiercely. Gather the others. She nodded toward a cluster of participants huddled together, their murmurs melting into the anxious atmosphere. We need to consolidate forces, but if they're going to fight, they need a reason. Caught in the swirl of impending confrontations, Sylas glanced at the group, a tapestry of varying emotions stitched together by fear and desperation. There was Nathan, his arms crossed defiantly, flaring nostrils betraying a simmering rage. Eden stood next to him, weary yet determined, the lines on her face deepening with each passing hour. Sylas turned back to Gwendolyn, her intense gaze unyielding. You think they'll listen? Before Gwendolyn could respond, an angry voice erupted from the crowd. What do we even get from this? It was Carla, a defector from the elite faction who had joined them late in the game. More lies? More traps set by those in power? What's the point? The tension rippled through the group, feeding the storm. Sylas stepped forward, heart pounding, feeling their eyes drill into him, awaiting his response. You think we're not in a trap already? He countered, his voice rising. What do you want, to wait for someone else to decide your fate? Across the arena, a glance passed between Nathan and Eden, each mirroring the uncertainty mirrored in the other's eyes. Their collective memory of past betrayals flickered like dying embers in a cold wind. Sylas is right, Eden finally said, her tone softer yet resolute. If we don't act, this game will lead us to our own graves. As arguments flared, Sylas caught fleeting gestures, crossed arms met with tentative nods, doubtful glances converging with an unexpected spark of unity. Gwendolyn paced beside him, her presence solidifying like a lighthouse in the storm. "What we need is a plan," she injected, her voice slicing through the discord like a sharp knife. "And what about the risks?" Nathan challenged, fists clenched. "We don't even know who we can trust here." "The only way we'll know is if we take that leap together," Gwendolyn insisted, looking directly into Nathan's eyes with unwavering conviction. "We can also expose the weaknesses behind our captors. They thrive on our fear." A murmur of agreement traveled the length of the group. Tension waned as hope flickered amid the storm. As they began to shake off the shroud of despair, Sylas's eyes found Gwendolyn's. They were kindred spirits, anchored amidst the chaos. "I've hidden for too long," Sylas admitted, his voice low, barely above a whisper. "But standing beside you, I feel different. We fight together." Gwendolyn pressed a palm against her heart, eyes shimmering with unspoken vulnerability. She half turned away, her breath hitching as anticipation crackled between them, a delicate awareness lingering in the charged space. Before the palpable moment could stretch too thin, Carla's voice broke the spell. "Then let's make them pay," she declared, summoning a fierce resolve. "No more games. We're the ones in control now." As Sylas watched Gwendolyn's determined stance, a pulse of deeper understanding ignited, a hint of affection woven into their budding partnership as they prepared to plunge into the storm together. "Right," he finally affirmed, stepping beside her. "Let's show them who we truly are." The group surged forward, caught in the heart of the storm, ready to confront what lay ahead, ready to fight for more than mere survival. Scene 21. Moments of vulnerability. The midday sun pooled through the cracked windows of the dilapidated safe house, casting a warm glow over the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. Gwendolyn leaned against the wall, her arms crossed tightly across her chest as if shielding herself from the weight of her memories. As the room fell silent and the distant sounds of the ongoing game faded into the background, her thoughts ebbed and flowed like the gentle tide, navigating through unshed tears and unspoken truths. Sylas lingered nearby, preoccupied, adjusting the loose threads of his makeshift survival gear. His sapphire eyes flickered with concern, cutting through the noise as he quietly assessed Gwendolyn's hesitance. "Gwen, you okay?" he asked, breaking the silence, his voice smooth yet filled with an undeniable urgency. The playful banter they often shared seemed insufficient now. She offered a half smile, fleeting and fragile. "I was just thinking about why I fight." The vulnerability in her voice hung in the air like a heavy fog, almost choking, but somehow refreshing in its honesty. "That's a heavy thought for the middle of chaos," Sylas quipped, attempting to lighten the mood, but the humor fell flat. She opened her mouth to respond, but instead her gaze fixed on the ground, lost in the echoes of memories that haunted her. "I lost someone once, a younger brother. He thought he could change the world, you know? That idealism." Her voice trembled, a crack of anguish woven through her words. "He believed people were inherently good, that they'd fight for what was right. But he walked into a situation, trusting the wrong people, and it cost him everything." The room felt smaller, stifling. Sylas moved closer, no longer just a shadow in the background, but rather a presence that offered comfort. "You didn't fail him, Gwendolyn. You're here now, fighting. That's what he would have wanted." She looked up at him then, and for a moment the vast depth of her blue-gray eyes mingled with the light, illuminating something raw and unguarded. "Sometimes I see him out there with the others. Sometimes I wish I could just reach through and tell him to be careful. But—" She faltered, the weight of her words pressing down upon her like lead. "What if he was right? What if there's still goodness in this world worth saving?" The walls around them began to close in, and Sylas, driven by an instinct he couldn't fully understand, reached for her hand. Gwendolyn stiffened at first, her breath hitching, then gradually relaxed as he intertwined their fingers gently. The electricity that surged through their touch ignited a fierce, undeniable chemistry, warm and intoxicating in the intimacy of this tattered place. "Maybe there is," Sylas murmured, his tone low, inviting. "Maybe that's why we keep fighting." His thumb brushed over her knuckles as he gazed into her eyes, searching for an answer that neither of them had yet found. A breath caught in Gwendolyn's chest, an almost imperceptible moment where time stood still. She hesitated, grappling with the precarious nature of their circumstances, the dangers outside, but also a yearning that ran deeper than mere survival. "Everything feels so impossibly heavy, Sylas," she said softly, the vulnerability now entwined with something else, an invitation. "Sometimes I don't want to hesitate anymore." And then, at last, the distance between them evaporated as they leaned closer. Their lips met softly, a gentle exploration at first, tentative, as if they were both unsure of the territory they were treading. In that shared space, the tension of the world outside dissipated, and a hidden warmth ignited between them, brightening the shadows that had long shrouded their hearts. The kiss deepened, growing more fervent, more desperate, as emotion cascaded between them, a moment suspended in time, their surroundings fading into oblivion. But it was fleeting, a sliver of warmth in an otherwise unforgiving landscape. They parted, breaths mingling, their eyes searching each other's, a silent acknowledgement of this new layer to their mission. "Whatever happens out there," Sylas whispered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, "we face it together." And in that moment, it didn't just feel like a promise. It felt like the beginning of something monumental, two souls ready to navigate the depths of chaos together, anchored by shared resolve and unspoken affection. Scene 22. Repercussions of trust. The dimly lit chamber hummed with a tension thick enough to slice through. Sylas leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The flickering shadows danced as he fixed his piercing blue gaze on Gwendolyn, who paced with fierce purpose.